And if you're new here, I'm Alicia. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm joining you from the native lands of the Ktunaxa, Spokane, and Shuswap tribes, now known as Spokane, Washington. So I thought we could start this one lying down. You might like to bring along one of your blankets to place under your head as a pillow. And then taking your time, making your way onto your back in whatever way is easiest for you. Once you get down here, you might like to bend the knees with the feet flat on the floor, press down into the feet, lift the hips just enough that you can smooth the flesh of the hips towards the heels. And you might like to take your feet wide and let your knees fall in towards each other so there's a little bit less effort there. And I also like to take my fingertips to the back of the head, lift the head just a bit, tuck the chin, and lower the head back down to get some more length in the back of the neck. So if you haven't practiced with me before, I like to remind you this is completely your practice. Think of anything that I'm going to offer as invitations, and then tune into your own bodily wisdom and your own inner teacher, and let those be your primary guides for our time together. And in a moment, I'm going to invite the bell that will drop us into the centering portion of the practice. Then we'll transition to some gentle mat-based movements, staying low to the ground. And we'll finish up with some breath work and some integration and relaxation time. Excuse me. So you're welcome to soften the gaze if you prefer to keep the eyes open, or you might choose to close the eyes down completely. And I'll invite the bell to drop us in. And as we're getting started, let's take a moment to acknowledge the tradition of yoga originated thousands of years ago in ancient India. And as you're ready, start to shift the awareness into the body. Noticing the places that the back body is in contact with the floor. If your knees are bent and your feet are flat on the floor, maybe you give the toes a wiggle, feeling into the sensations of the feet. Noticing the firmness of the floor beneath them. Noticing temperature or texture there. Feeling into the bum and the hips. The lower back, middle back, and upper back. And the backs of the arms. Back of the neck and head. allowing yourself to release into the floor beneath you. Really receiving that support there. And noticing the contrast with the top side of the body. It might be a little more cool or airy. And you might experiment with bending the arms at the elbows, leaving the backs of the upper arms on the floor, and resting the fingertips on the belly on either side. And begin to observe the breath. And there's no need to try to change the breath. But notice how the body is naturally moving with the breath cycle. Feeling into the fingertips. Notice the expansion on the inhale, maybe even a lengthening up of the spine. And the softening and the settling of each exhale. Really letting your belly be extra soft and heavy on the exhale. And notice how the breath also expands the body out to the sides and maybe even back into the floor. Riding that wave of the breath. And since the quality of each exhale is more of that softening and settling, that's something natural that you can use as a cue for your body to let go any amount more. Letting go of any of those obvious areas of gripping, those areas that might be in your control. Not all of the areas of gripping will be in your control, but some of them might be. Softening through the throat, the jaw and tongue and lips. And notice if any thoughts or emotions are coming up for you. Can you greet all of them with some kindness and compassion? Rather than pushing away the unpleasant thoughts and emotions or grasping on to the pleasant ones. Can you find that space in the middle where there's some acceptance of whatever's coming up? I'd like to bring in the intention today, especially since we're in the holiday season. It's fast approaching. I honor my boundaries. So if that intention doesn't resonate with you, let it go. But if it does, think of how that can apply to your practice today. Remember, I'm just offering invitations, so you're in charge. What kind of boundaries do you feel like you want to set for yourself? And what boundaries might arise in the moment? And how might those boundaries translate into your everyday life or interactions with family and friends? Whenever you're feeling ready, you can open the eyes if they were closed or lift the gaze and visually reorient to what's around you. Maybe you let the head fall side to side as you're taking in your space. And if you're ready for some additional movement, you could also let your knees go side to side. Maybe you take the head and neck along with the knees. Maybe you go in the opposite direction. What feels best for you right now? As the knees start to move, if more space opens up, maybe you press into that outside foot just a tiny bit where you're peeling one hip off the floor. Maybe that changes the sensation in that top thigh. And then let's go ahead and roll to one side. You might take that bottom arm and bend it, take it under your head as a pillow. Let's take a couple of sighs out here. And then you can use that top hand and bottom arm to press yourself up. Let's find a comfortable seated position. I'm going to sit up on one blanket. You might sit up on a blanket or two or your bolster. Sometimes it can help to have the hips elevated to make a more comfortable seat. And I'm going to sit cross-legged, but that may or may not work for you. So I'll give you a couple of other options here. If you want to take your legs out long in front of you, and you are sitting up on some height, and when you take your legs out, you feel like the backs of your knees are hovering, take one of those folded blankets and you can either roll it up or fold it, and then tuck that in underneath the backs of the knees. So you probably only need this if you're sitting up on height, because if you're flat down on the floor, then your knees might already be more supported. But know that that's an option. And either way, let's take the skin out and back from each hip so that we can feel our sitting bones more fully on whatever we're sitting on. And if you are sitting up on some height, you might try sitting towards the front of that height so that your hips are higher and your knees and ankles are down lower. I'm going to back up a little bit so my ankles are on my mat. And once you get situated, feel your sitting bones, feel your new base. Now we have a new position where different parts of the body are in contact with the floor. So feel into that. You could let your spine lengthen up from your sitting bones all the way through the top of the head. Let's roll the shoulders forward up towards the ears and back and down. Let's do that a few more times. We can also start to link the movement and the breath together if you choose. You could try inhaling as you take the shoulders forward and up, exhaling as you take them back and down. And then letting yourself settle into your own pace. And you can let the natural rhythm of your breath guide you. Let's go a couple times in the opposite direction. Maybe inhaling as the shoulders come back and up. Exhaling as they come forward and down. Really letting them be heavy at the bottom of the exhale. Let's let the shoulders soften down. Actually, let's do one more forward, back, and up though, and then let them soften back and down. And if you haven't already, maybe you switch the cross of your legs if you had them crossed. On your next inhale, still lengthening up through the spine, letting the shoulders be soft. On the next exhale, let's tuck the chin first towards the throat, and then lower the chin any amount more in the direction of the chest. And with the next inhale, let's roll one ear towards the shoulder. And exhale, the chin back towards the chest. Next inhale, taking the opposite ear towards the shoulder. And then find your own rhythm again. Option to let your natural breath guide you. And if you find a sweet spot, maybe you stay more than one breath cycle in a position. There's lots of options here. When you have an ear towards the shoulder, you can always slowly nod the head yes. So you're nodding with your head in an angle, taking the chin up and down. I like to take this real slow if I'm doing this position. You can also play with extending the opposite arm when you have an ear towards the shoulder. And moving that arm around, rotating it, exploring through the fingers, noticing how the sensations change down the side of that neck and shoulder and arm. Sometimes that can really change all the different feelings there. You could even play with bending the elbow. Just be open to exploring with no expectations of what's going to happen, but feeling into whatever's happening. And honoring any differences that show up from side to side, and giving that side what it needs separate from what you did on the first side. Let's finish up with one more roll to each side. And coming back up through center. Let's switch the cross of the legs again. And with the hands on the thighs for support, let's make some circles with the torso. You could try inhaling as you come back and exhaling as you come forward. You can let your breath set the pace of your movement, or you can let that go if that's not working best for you. Next time you come through center, let's reverse and go the opposite direction. whenever you're feeling even both ways, we'll come on back through center again. Let's go ahead and grab our strap. And I have a long strap. I have like a 10-foot strap, so I'm going to fold mine in half. So this will just depend on how long your strap is. But we'll want to be able to grip the strap in gentle fists with palms facing down, about shoulder distance apart. And then let's bring the strap out in front of us with soft shoulders. And then on your next exhale, let's rotate the left palm so the thumb is facing up. And then with a tight elbow in towards the body, so that left elbow hugged in, slide that left arm back along the side of the rib cage and then reach across with the right arm. So we're bringing a little bit of a twist in here. Let's inhale, unwind to center, bring that left palm back out front. On the next exhale, rotate the right palm so the thumb is facing up, right elbow hugged in along the body as you slide that right elbow back and reach across with the left. Inhale back to center. Now don't get too hung up on how I'm rotating my hand, but for me that feels more natural to rotate it before I bring it back. But there's nothing wrong with keeping it forward. It just feels more natural for me. It helps my elbow stay hugged in towards my body. So think of this as a twist. Inhaling as you come through center. Exhaling as you slide that elbow in close, reaching across with the opposite arm. Let's take it once more to each side. Come back through center. Let's open the strap wide if you had it folded. And re-grip in gentle fists. And depending on the length of your strap, as we go through this, if your strap feels a little too short, that's okay. Just let go of the strap when you reach the end of it. So let's inhale the arms up. As the arms come up, let your grip widen on the strap as wide as it needs to make space for your shoulders. And then on the exhale, let's bring the strap behind. So now your hands can slide really wide. So if you come back here and your strap's too short, just let go of one end as you bring your arms behind you. And then inhale back up. Exhale forward and down. And then I like to reset my grip in between. Inhaling the arms up. Exhale, sliding along the strap, bringing it behind you. Inhale back up. And exhale forward and down. Let's do one more of these. And then let's give the arms a shake out. Let's make gentle fists, rolling the wrists one direction and other direction. Let's flick the fingers at different heights, different sides. Maybe it feels good to sigh out a couple of exhales now. shake that out. Let's extend the legs out front if they haven't been already. And if you're sitting up on height, you might like to lower down to one blanket or no blankets so that your knees are supported by the floor. And then let's windshield wiper both feet side to side. You could go in and out, or you could take the feet together to one side and then the other, or any combination of those things, what seems interesting, what feels best. And then let's roll the ankles one way. And the other way. Let's wiggle the toes. And then let's grab our blocks. Let's start with the blocks on the highest height. And I'm scooting right now towards the front of my blanket so that my pelvis is slightly tipping forward. And with the blocks on the highest height, hands on the blocks, let's inhale as we lengthen the spine up, soften the shoulders. And then on the exhale, let's hinge forward from the hips. So depending on the tightness in the back of your legs, you may feel like you're not coming very far forward, and that's okay. You probably can't even tell that I'm hinging forward, but I feel it pretty strongly actually in the backs of my legs. So let's go ahead and keep the spine long and the chest open rather than hunching down just to make it feel like we're going further. We don't need to do that. So let's keep the hinge forward coming from the hips. You could even do this a few times to get the idea of the hinge coming from the hips rather than you're just hunching your spine forward. You can always play with that windshield wipering of the feet if that might help to loosen up the backs of the legs. You can play with flexing and extending the ankles. Just notice how that changes the sensations in the back of the legs. Again, it's okay if someone were looking at you and they might think you're just sitting completely straight up and down. But if you're feeling it in the backs of your legs, that's what we're looking for, is a little stretch in the backs of the legs. So it doesn't matter what it looks like from the outside. What does it feel like on the inside? A little bit can go a long ways here. Soften the jaw and tongue again, the throat, the lips. Let's take 3 more full breaths here. And after your third exhale, let's press into the hands to hinge back up. Let's set the blocks off to the side wider so that you can bend the knees and bring the soles of the feet towards each other. So a couple options here. If your knees are hovering off the ground quite a ways and it feels like you're having to struggle to hold them up, you could take those blocks and you could prop them in a way to support your thighs or your knees. Sometimes it feels more comfortable to me if I put my block at an angle rather than having this sharper corner into the side of my leg. Sometimes that helps make that a little bit more comfortable and supportive. If your knees are more towards the ground already, you could opt to use your blocks for under your hands. But doesn't matter. Your feet can be as close in or far away from your hips as feels comfortable. Wherever you're at, let's inhale to lengthen the spine. Let the shoulders be soft. And then on the exhale, we're going to hinge forward from the hips again. So same thing as when we had the legs extended out front. Your hinge forward may be very subtle. If you're using your blocks like I am with your hands, you can have them on any height. You can dial them down if there's more space as you're hinging forward. If your blocks are under your knees, you could use your thighs and ankles, lower legs for support as you're hinging forward. And like this, you could also even rest your elbows and forearms inside your thighs if your legs are up a bit higher. So we're still trying to keep the chest open, the spine long, letting the forward part come from the hinge in the hips. And let's not try to force it. Let's let the breath open up any more space if it's available. And it might not be available. This is a good spot to check in with your boundaries. How are your inner thighs feeling? Are you trying to go too far because you think you should? What is your body telling you? What kind of cues is it giving you? Do you need to back off a little bit? Let's take one more full breath wherever you're at. And on an inhale, let's use the support of the hands to help press back up, hinging back up at the hips. And then let's go ahead and make our way to hands and knees. I'm going to give an option for a wrist-free option here if you prefer. You probably want to bring along at least one blanket for padding under the knees. If you'd like some extra luxury, maybe bring 2 blankets. So first off, if you'd prefer to go wrist-free, the options would probably be with the blocks or the bolster. I'll show blocks first. I have cork blocks, so they're pretty heavy and sturdy, so they are good on the medium height for me. If your blocks are feeling wobbly, take them down to the lowest height. But you can angle the blocks in front of you so that you can bring your forearms down and the wrists can hang off. So in this case, your elbows would be roughly under your shoulders, knees roughly under the hips, and similar thing, but you could do the bolster as well. If you want it a little softer under the forearms and elbows, you could come down to the bolster. If you want to go hands and knees, I still like to use my blocks under my hands. So in this case, your wrists and elbows will roughly be under the shoulders. And then you can have your blocks on the medium or low height, depending on how sturdy they feel. And let's start with a little forward and back rock. You can even press your blocks a little bit forward while we're doing this rocking, so you have more space to come forward, and then sit the bum back towards the heels. And let's start to link it up, movement with the breath if you'd like. Inhaling as you come up, exhaling as you sit the bum back. And this motion will just be a little bit shorter, more compact if you're down on your forearms. But very similar. After the last one, let's come back up through center and reset the blocks or the bolster so you're stacking everything under your shoulders now. Knees roughly under the hips. Next inhale, let's drop the belly towards the floor, open the chest, and bring the gaze up slightly, whatever's feeling good for your neck. So now we're arching the back here. On the next exhale, Let's press the belly up towards the sky. We're rounding the back, tucking the chin. So now we're rounding the back up. Inhale, drop the belly, open the chest. Gaze can come forward or up. Exhale, rounding the back, pressing up and out through the shoulder blades, tucking the chin. Find your own rhythm here. You can let your breath guide you. And next time you come through center, let's take it side to side. So let's exhale, take one ear towards the hip. So you're kind of making a C shape now. You're bending the spine side to side laterally. Inhale to center. Exhale, take the opposite ear towards the hip. Inhale, center. And then continue like this at your own pace. Let's take it once more to each side. Coming back through center, and now we're going to do a variation of cat and cow where we bring it in a flying cow part to it. So to do this, whether you're on forearms or hands, let's inhale, drop the belly again, arch the back. Exhale, round the back up, tuck in. Come back through center, and as you come back through center, shift the weight back, hips towards the heels, so you can come up and bring the arms up. And as your arms come up, you could even invite in a tiny back bend here if it feels okay for you. And then bring the arms back down, hands back down or forearms back down, whatever you're doing. So inhale, drop the belly, open the chest. Exhale, round the back, tuck in. Come back through center. And then sit the hips back. Inhale, rise up. Arms come up, little back bend if you choose. And on an exhale, bring the arms back down. So find your own rhythm here. If linking the breath and the movement together exactly feels a little bit clunky, that's okay. Just breathe in whatever way feels most natural. Let's go ahead and do one more. And after your last one, let's take the blocks, turn them the opposite direction, and we're going to use these as a platform for the bolster. So let's set the bolster on top of the blocks. Scoot yourself so your hips are right up against your bolster. Take your knees wide. We want to be able to make space for the belly. And my microphone will get covered here a little bit, so I'm probably not going to lower down all the way. But let your back be long, and then lower yourself down onto your bolster. So this is like a supported child's pose. You can lay your head down. Maybe I'll try this. I might cover it a little bit. You might want to take off your glasses. Your arms can come down through that hole in between the blocks. Let your hips be heavy back towards your heels so that your back's nice and long. Take some full breaths here. Receiving the support beneath you, really letting it hold you. Let's turn the head to the other side if you haven't already. Let's go ahead and bring the hands to the floor. Press yourself back up. And let's make our way down for our Shavasana. We'll do a little breath work. I'm going to give another option here for setting up for Shavasana if you're interested in trying it. We probably would be better off with even more props than we have, but we'll make do with what we have. So you can make a T shape. Now, if this doesn't work for you, just let this go. Find whatever's going to work for you. But we'll make a T shape with our block. So I've got one block on the low height, one block on the medium height. Yeah, I think I'll do that. I can always adjust it later if I'd rather a different height. And then you can lay your bolster on it. So you're making kind of a bolster recliner. And then you'll take one of your blankets and add it on top of your bolster as a pillow. And then bring your other blanket along with you. We can use this top blanket to cover ourselves, but what we're going to want to do is back your bum and your hips up so it's right against the bottom of your bolster. You can press the bolster down, kind of squish it down as you lay back. And you could keep your knees bent here. You could put your feet together, let your knees fall out. You could also take your legs long if that's comfortable for you. And like I said, if you're experimenting with this and it's not for you, let it go. It's no problem. We're just trying something a little different, mixing it up. If your knees are bent, you might like to press down through the feet, smooth that skin of the hips towards the heels to make some length in the low back. You can also take the fingertips to the back of the head, lift the head, tuck the chin, and lower it back down. This is where it might be nice to have some additional blocks or blankets for under the arms if you don't like that feeling of the arms hanging out. But this can be a nice position to open your chest. You can soften the gaze or close the eyes. You might also find that you need to tweak your blanket pillow a bit differently from when it might be when you're laying flat on your back on the floor. And start to tune in with all the places that you're in contact with the support beneath you again. Feeling the boundaries of the body. What do you feel along the back side of the body, the feet and legs, bum and hips, lower back, middle back, and upper back. Backs of the arms and hands, back of the neck and head. What are you noticing about the top side of the body? Tops of the feet, front of the legs, hips, belly, chest and shoulders, the throat, jaw, lips and tongue, cheeks, nose, eyes, ears, forehead, and top of the head. And start to notice your breath again. Notice all the places that you can feel the sensation of the breath. You might notice the rise and fall of the chest or belly. Maybe your ribs expanding out into the sides, into the back, into the bolster or the floor. Maybe you sense the breath at the nostrils or the back of the throat. Let's imagine riding the wave or riding the breath like a wave rather. On the inhale, the wave is coming in towards the beach, cresting, falling on the beach, and then the exhale, the wave is receding back out into the ocean. If that visual is helpful for you, you can use that. If not, let it go. You might also notice on the inhale, first feels like the belly's filling, and then the chest, and up by the collarbones. As the breath's going out, it's going out first from the collarbones, then the chest, and finally the belly. Let's take the next minute or so. You can keep breathing if you like this 3-part breath, if you'd like to focus on that. Or maybe you let it go, let your breath find its natural rhythm. But let's take the next minute or so to lightly rest the awareness. It could be on the breath, the natural inhale and exhale. Or you could be choosing to anchor the awareness to some other sensation. And you'll just lightly anchor it there. And then when your mind wanders off, which it will, because that's what minds do, whenever you notice that it's wandered off, without any judgment, just gently bring it back to rest on that original anchor. And it's normal to do this again and again. It's all part of the practice. And I'll bring you out with 3 sounds of the bell. Taking your own time, let's invite some small movements back into the body. Maybe you start out at ankles and gradually make your way towards any larger movements, whatever feels nice to wake the body back up. And depending on your position, maybe you roll onto one side or roll off your bolster slowly, eventually using your arms and hands to press yourself up to a seated position, keeping things nice and slow. If you'd like to join me to close, you can take one hand to your heart, one hand to your belly. May I greet my body with gentleness. May I soften when life invites me to harden. May I listen to my intuition with wisdom and trust it with ease. And may I appreciate my body a little more in this moment, just as it is. Then we can bring the hands together in front of the heart. Let's take one breath together. We'll inhale and exhale. Thank you so much for choosing to share your time and your practice with me today.